There we are. So we're jumping in again to the Gospel of Shree Ramakrishna, page 220 in the chapter called The Master with the Brahmo Devotees, Part 2. And yeah, we're going to start. I think we've already done this one, but it's a good place to start. And it's a topic that I think is a good one to cover. And so the more we hear it, the better. He's having just different conversations with people of the Brahmo Samaj, and they're asking him some really, really good questions. I think questions that a lot of people are interested in, like how do we deal with our passions, and how do we have our spiritual experience. And tonight he was talking later about God being the doer, and we are just the instrument, which is something that he repeats quite a few times in the gospel. And actually, in many of the scriptures, especially the Ganic scriptures, they make this comment again and again that you only think that you're the doer, that you are not actually the doer, that your body and mind are carrying on, and you are just simply the observer, but have confused yourself to be the doer. It's like it's kind of like in the dream, like in a dream again. We could use that worn out example, but in the dream, think about all the other characters in the dream that are carrying on. And I had that one dream that I share where one of the characters had a sense of self. I guess most characters in your dream actually do. That's how you interact with them. And so they actually have a sense of self and a sense of activation, and yet they're in your dream. Your mind is what is creating them and using them and telling the story, but they have a sense of their own existence and a sense of their own choices and their own doership. And the sages say that this waking world is not so different from that, and that we actually, in reality, God is the doer, and it's not our ego self that is actuating this life. And I use that other very tired example of mine about the young boy in the airport in Phoenix, standing at that video game, racing game. He could barely reach the steering wheel, and there was just a car going around the track. There were like 5 cars going around the track, but he was one of them. And he was paying very close attention and just really driving the car. And his father comes, taps him on the head, tells him the plane's there. You've got to come away. I can't, Dad. If I let go of the steering wheel, the car's going to wreck. And so, well, Dad, says, no, we have to go. And he pulls him away from the machine. And when he gets pulled away from the machine, I, who am sitting right next to it, realize he hadn't even put in a quarter, that the thing was in demo mode and that those cars were just going around the track. But because his will and the machine's will were the same for the time that he was playing, he was under the impression that he was driving the car around the track, and that if he let go, the car would wreck. And so that kind of alignment is what happens with us. We've been in this body watching and observing everything, and have identified ourselves with the mind, which is remembering all of its habits and all of its samskaras and all of its karmas and everything that it has to do. And our alignment, we align with that will and think that we're actually the one driving, because our will for periods of time align with the machine's will, as it were. And so it gives us the sense of being in charge. And we get rather frustrated or angry or hurt or confused when something happens that wasn't our will and that we couldn't control. But in fact, we're never in control in that aspect. So that's one way of realizing this. The other is, if you look at any event that you do, how many unknown variables are you not considering when you say you're in charge? So like when you show up at an appointment at 11 o'clock and you actually manage to get there on time, look at all the variables along the way that could have put you there at 12 o'clock, that you're not in charge of, that you couldn't have done. And this time, for whatever reason, all the things lined up and got you there at 11. And you take responsibility for that. You believe that you got yourself there at 11, that it was it's an absurdity, because that means that you're responsible for the fact that there was no earthquake, there wasn't a hurricane, that they didn't burn the building down, that you didn't have an accident, that you weren't sick, all of those variables that had to fall into place that you have no control over in order for that 11 o'clock appointment to happen. And so through discernment and observation, when you separate yourself from mind and body and begin your process of discernment, and you begin watching the inner workings of how the mind patterns are arranged, it becomes more and more obvious that you're a watcher, that this is carrying on, and that it's just really the wheel of samsara, your body mind with all of its karma locked up in itself, and the communication between body and mind, that they're taking care of each other, that we see, wow, this carries on without me having to do anything. That there is no this ego self truly is just part of the dysfunction of a mind, and that it happened only because you attached or identified yourself with the mind and went into what we know as delusion. So he's saying here, he says, if God makes me do everything, then I'm not responsible for my sins. Great guy, must have been a lawyer. So he's saying, he's making the obvious statement. He's like, well, hey, look, if that's true, then I'm not responsible for anything. So why am I going to be held accountable for it? And the master, of course, says with a smile. So the master's, eye is twinkling at this point. He's like, yeah, I knew you were going to say that. And he says, yes, Duryodhana also said that, one of the characters in the scriptures. Oh, Krishna, I do what you, seated in my heart, make me do. If a man has the firm, and then Ramakrishna says, if a man has the firm conviction that God alone is the doer and that he is the instrument, then he cannot do anything sinful. So he's saying, look, okay, you're right. You're absolutely right. But if you have that firm conviction, you're not going to be motivated by your ego self. So it's not going to be the desires of your ego self that are being fulfilled, right? So he says, as a matter of fact, if you have the firm conviction, the firm understanding that you're not the doer, the body mind in that state cannot perform a sin, cannot make a mistake, cannot take a wrong direction, right? He says one cannot even believe in the existence of God until one's heart becomes pure. You can't even know you can't know at that level of knowing, not a matter of a belief. Most of our beliefs in God are intellectual, right? We run most of our life without even the thought of God. And if we had a firm belief in God, we would be overwhelmed by even the possibility that that's true, that a God of love is the universe, let alone running the universe. It would have such a deeply profound effect on us. And Ramakrishna says, you can't even really believe in God until the heart reaches a certain level of purity, until you've renounced a certain amount of me and mine. Because until you do that, the ego cloud does not clear enough or break up enough for you to see the presence of the divine, for you to experience the presence of the divine. So Shree Ramakrishna looks at the devotees assembled in the worship hall and said, it is very good to gather in this way now and then, and to think of God, to sing his name and his glories. But the worldly man's yearning for God is momentary. It lasts as long as a drop of water on a red hot frying pan, right? He's in another place, he kind of says, that the worldly man thinks of God like he'll see a beautiful flower and he'll say, oh, look what a beautiful flower God has made. And then that's the end of it. He's on to whatever else he was doing. And so this is worldly life. Worldly life means to be crowded with the sensory world and to be living fully in the sensory world. And the ego, which is interested in doing that and being that, is defined by that, actually. Prevents you from seeing anything deeper in yourself. It hides the rest of the reality from you and tries to maintain that illusion that you are the doer and that you are the central figure, and that God is a nice idea that kind of sits back there somewhere, But if you really knew, like truly knew of the existence of the divine, it wouldn't be the secondary character in your life. It would be the primary character in your life, and you would be thinking of that reality significantly more than you would be thinking of this small, rather uh, insignificant particular, which is you and me, the body mind. We would not at all be thinking about the things that we normally think about during the day, uh, because there would be that notion, that understanding that this divine being is present and taking care and omnipresent, omnipowerful, you know, and full of love. Most importantly, he says, but the worldly man's yearning for God is momentary. It lasts as long as a drop of water in the red hot frying pan. The worship was about to begin, and the big hall was filled with Brahmo devotees. Some of the Brahmo ladies sat on chairs with music books in their hands. The songs of the Brahmo Samaj were sung to the accompaniment of harmonium and piano. Shree Ramakrishna's joy was unbounded. The invocation was followed by a prayer, and then the worship began. The acharyas, or the teachers, seated on the platform, recited from the Vedas. Om, thou art our Father, give us right knowledge, do not destroy us, we bow to thee. The Brahmo devotees chanted in chorus with the teachers. Om, Brahman is truth, knowledge, infinity. It shines as bliss and immortality. Brahman is peace, blessedness, the one without a second. It is pure and unstained by sin. The acharyas chanted in praise of God. Om, O reality, cause of the universe, we bow to thee. Then the acharyas chanted their prayers together. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us to light. From death, lead us to immortality. Reach us through and through, O Rudra, and protect us evermore with your compassionate face. So we get a nice description there of Brahman in that first one. Brahman is truth. It's that inner integrity, right? That alignment between what you say, think, and do. Brahman is truth. It's knowledge. It's that grokking. This knowledge is not a mental referential relational knowledge. This knowledge is a spontaneous knowing from an infinite sea of knowledge. You don't have to ask for the knowledge. It arises in the moment as it is needed. Each moment that you are provided with all of the knowledge necessary for navigating that moment perfectly. And infinity. It's infinity and beyond. That there is no boundary. To be infinite is to have no attribute, either no attribute or all attributes, as you'd like. You can think of it either way. The glass is empty, like the Buddhists, nirvana, or the glass is full, where this divine self is in, through, of, and beyond everything. It shines as bliss. This is how we know it. This is what we experience in the knowledge of that presence, is that divine bliss, that divine love. It shines as bliss and immortality, right? And we can have that experience. And I mean, at the highest level, at Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there's no experience because there's one without a second. But at like a Sarvikalpa Samadhi, where you witness the presence of God, you see God, and you know of that presence, but you still maintain a modicum of ego, so that there's a separateness, enough separateness to stand in awe, to worship, to feel that love, to feel the love inspired within you in response to that. That is still there. So it shines as bliss and immortality. And you can, in those higher states, when you separate from body and separate from mind, and you're actually able to stand in silent mind, in stillness, the life of stillness, as they say in the Philokalia. If you can stand in that space and observe mind, you become aware that you are outside of time. You can see clearly and understand clearly that time belongs to the mind, that time and change cannot be separated, that it's change that creates the illusion of time. And all change is within the mind, right? Within the impure mind, the mind where the fingers of me and mine are stirring up thought and creating multiple ideas of self, creating multiple streams of thought that take on, borrow from you a certain amount of sentience and strength. And through that borrowing of your sentience, which is really your identification with them, thinking that they are you, by thinking that they are you, you give them the illusion of sentience. And so we tend to argue with ourselves, which is absurd. And we tend to think within our mind about things, which is absurd, because what is the thinker of the mind and the hearer of the mind going to tell each other that they both don't already know? And so this becomes apparent when we reach that silence, when we reach that purity. Brahman is peace, because there is no desire in Brahman. There's no lack. Brahman is perfectly balanced, perfectly in harmony. It's blessedness and the one without a second. You know, they always say that, one without a second, because if you say it's one, you imply a second. You know, you can't have one without the idea of a second. And so they always add that extra statement that Brahman is one without a second. And just that one description of Brahman, one without a second, is enough to teach you all of the rest of what he's already said. From that, you can deduce the fact that immortality. You can deduce from that you are not the doer, that God alone is, that which changes is unreal. All of these things come out of that. And so just through coming to that silence of mind, just through experiencing that stillness within, these are the things that come into your awareness. These are the things that ego normally blocks out from you. You can't see it because you can't observe the mind in ego space. In ego space, you believe yourself to be the mind. You're not observing it. You believe it to be you. You believe you are the source of its thinking, the source of its desires, the source of its thoughts and its longings, its hopes, its regrets, its resentments, all of those things. And just like Thakur says, that the ego, the state of being identified with mind and with body, that you're like those cutout. My mom used to do it as a girl. I've never done it. When she was little, she used to tell me that her mother used to do it, where there's a certain way that you can cut out a string of little paper dolls, and she would set them on the lid of a boiling pot of water, and the little dolls would kind of dance around the outside of the pan. And Ramakrishna uses that exact same idea when he describes that when we are connected, or when we are identified with ego, or not ego, identified with mind and body, and form that ego, that's that egoic self, that sense of me, this body mind, that roils up the mind, gets it spinning. You know, those fingers of me and mine are in there just making waves all over the place. And what happens? Your body mind, you dance around like a paper doll. You are at the beck and call of the desires of the mind. And the mind makes you dance and dance and dance and dance. You are bound. You are a slave to its desires and its commands and its interests. And you don't even recognize that slavery, because you think that the desires of the slave driver are your desires. And so you don't even recognize your bondage. You think that you are free. And as a matter of fact, you begin in your delusion to define freedom as being able to do whatever you want. And Ramakrishna smiles, because he says, you don't even stop to think that those are not your desires, that those are manipulations of the mind, and you're buying into it by believing them and owning them to be your own. And so this is why we have such a lackluster interest in getting free. It's why we're not crazy about doing practice and crazy about learning these truths and doing whatever necessary. That longing doesn't arise in us, because we still have that idea, well, I get to do what I want, it's not so bad, because we haven't realized that we don't want anything, that every desire is a delusion. It's untrue. It's caused by an imbalance of the infinite identifying with the finite, that which has no limit, accepting the limits given to it and living accordingly. And so that's why, that first time experience of seeing any of these things will radically change your existence, radically change your experience of being in a way that you will never forget, and through which you will be forever changed. And then, of course, that leads them to the final prayer from the unreal. What is the unreal? The unreal is change, the changing world. If it's Thakur says, if it changes, it is unreal. The unchanging alone is real. So as long as you believe yourself to be anything that changes, you're in bondage. So the prayer is, lead us from the unreal to the real. What is the real? That part of you that never changes, that you within. Lead me out of the mind of changing, of this constant flux, this constant flow of unrepeated change. Lead me out of that to the stillness within, the stillness of contentment, the stillness of peace, the stillness of immortality, the stillness of fearlessness. Lead us to the real from the darkness. Yes, and what is the darkness? It's when the light, the source of the light of consciousness, is blocked by the ego, and you live in the shadow of the ego. From that darkness, lead us to light. Lead us to the light of consciousness, that which illumines our inner world. I always used to wonder, what is this light of consciousness? If you want to know exactly what the light of consciousness is, let's go back, drag you back to your dream, take you back inside. What is it in your dream that creates daylight? That dream is happening in here in a cranium. You don't have a light switch in there. There's nothing in there. And yet in your dream, you can experience a daytime with the sun, the light of the sun. Well, that light within the mind is the light of consciousness. And what's interesting is the sages say that it's the light of your waking state also. Why? Because none of the light of this imagined world, this outside world, can get into your mind. The light that hits your eyes does not make it to the mind, does not make it to the brain. It stops at the back of the eye socket. When it hits the retina, it gets translated into neurochemical information that then goes to the brain. So you have no light even now. The light that you're witnessing in your room is not the light that you assume to be outside of your body. It is the light of consciousness creating a symbol for physical light in the universe of symbols that it has created within your mind that you live in. And once again, that statement, we don't live in a world. We live in a mind. And so this is what he's saying. Lead us from this darkness in the shadow of the ego, to knowing the source of this light, the light of consciousness. From death, lead us to immortality, because all things that change will die. All things that are composed will decompose. And so lead us out of this death to immortality. You know, in the Christian scriptures, there's that statement that the wages of sin is death, but the wages of the spirit are immortality, virtue or immortality. And why is that? Because it's sin. Sin happens through identity with the particular. Sin happens when you identify with the body and it's hungry, so you eat while someone else goes hungry. Or you push somebody out of line to get ahead. The sin is caused by your identification with the particular, and you take care of the particular and not the whole. You focus on this small point of reference, the ego, and you do what's best for this body and for this mind, and you let everything else go. This selfishness begins to grow and develop through that egoism. And so when this body dies, right, if you're in the hospital and you're on your deathbed and it's going, if you're a body identified, you're experiencing death. That's the wages of wrong thinking. Those are the wages of sin. You watch the body die, believing that it's you. And so you'll experience that fear and that desperation, that loneliness, and that regret. Oh, I'm leaving my little Hari, my little Sambo, oh, I'm leaving whatever. But that to the knower, to the person who has let go of that, who has died before they die, right? Christian, the New Testament's full of that statement. To die before you die means the death of the ego, the death of this ignorant idea that you are small and separate and apart from the whole, that you're caught in a web of desires and their fulfillments. But if you know that you're free, if you even have the idea on your deathbed that this is not real, that this is, you are the observer of this play, then you do not suffer death. You know that it's the body dying, and you know that the body will drop off, but you will know through experience, not through just a belief, but through a seeing, through a grokking. Do you guys know that word, grok? It's a great word. There's a book called Stranger in a Strange Land. It's a science fiction book, and it's about this alien that comes to Earth, and he's a perfect being. So it's very much like the story of Jesus, where Jesus is an alien. And he coins this word, grok. He says somebody who has studied milk and seen milk and can talk about milk and know, but they can't. If you say they know milk, they can say that because they've learned all about it, but they haven't grokked milk. You haven't grokked milk until you've drunk it, till you've tasted it. And so grokking is to have a living experience of something, not just a knowledge of something. And so when we grok our reality, when we grok our separateness from mind and from body, these things become apparent to us. They're not matters of faith, as we might think they are. From our perspective as bound beings, we think it would take an awful lot of faith for me to believe in immortality, to believe in eternity. And yet, if you have, when you do have that moment of grace where the mind stills and you know that you are separate from it, these are the things that you will realize that the ego has been blocking from you. The darkness of ego has shaded you from this light of the reality of being outside space, time, causation, has blocked you from the light of knowing that there is an eternity and immortality, has blocked out your contentment and blocked you from knowing your harmony with the whole, that you are one without a second. So the prayer says, let us reach us through and through, O Rudra. So, knowing the tangle of mind, knowing the tangle of our thoughts, he says, reach us through and through, come God, reach into this web of thought and web of change, full of desires and full of failures and winnings and longings. Reach through all of this web of stuff that we can't even begin to know and protect us. Help us. We're tired and driven. We're confused and alone. We don't know up from down. Reach through all of that and protect us evermore. Don't let go. Don't withdraw from us. In your grace, stay with us. Help us out with your compassionate face. Let us see that light of consciousness. Let us see what the ego has blocked us from. As Shree Ramakrishna heard these hymns, he went into a spiritual mood. After this, an acharya read a paper. The worship was over. Most of the devotees went downstairs or to the courtyard for fresh air while the refreshments were being made ready. It was about 9 o'clock in the evening. The hosts were so engrossed with other invited guests that they forgot to pay any attention to Shree Ramakrishna. It's funny, because Ramakrishna, it's just, he's the center of our lives now. We just realize the magnitude of what he was. And just to see him sitting there alone in a room, with one or two of his disciples looking around, why aren't they bringing any food? Why is nobody paying any attention to us? They've forgotten you. The master to Rakal and the other devotees, what's the matter? Nobody's paying any attention to us. Rakal angrily, sir, let us leave here and go to Dakshineshwar. Let's get out of here. The master with a smile, Keep quiet. The carriage hire is 3 rupees and 2 annas. Who's going to pay for it? Pure practicality of a renunciate. Like, dude, our anger isn't worth walking home. Stop it. The carriage hires 3 rupees and 2 annas. Who will pay for that? Stubbornness won't get us anywhere. You haven't a penny, and you're making these empty threats. Besides, where will we find food at this hour of the night? It's wonderful, actually, in a way, how practical that is. You just see the mind of Thakur, anger and indignation, indignity, all of those things. He knew them all to be just, mind stuff, mind noise, that products of the ego. And he's like, get that out of your head. Think about things. Where are you going to eat? Who's going to pay for the carriage hire? You got no sense at all. After a long time, dinner was announced, and the devotees were asked to take their seats. The master, with Rakal and the others, followed the crowd to the second floor. No room could be found for him inside the hall. Man, this host is blowing it. Finally, with great difficulty, a place was found for him in a dusty corner. Oh my gosh. It gets worse and worse. A Brahmin woman served some curry, but Shree Ramakrishna could not eat it. He ate a luchi with salt and took some sweets. There was no limit to the master's kindness. The hosts were mere youngsters. How could he be displeased with them, even though they did not show him the proper respect? Further, it would have been inauspicious for the household if a holy man had left the place without taking food. Finally, the feast had been prepared in the name of God. So you see, this is the compassion of Ramakrishna. He could have listened to Rakal and walked out, but he knew that would have been a curse on the household, and he knew that this feast had been put together in the name of God, right? And so just all of these things were more important to him than his own treatment. That he didn't want to curse this young couple who clearly didn't know what they were doing or were making one mistake after another. He didn't hold it against him. Now, why would they put that in the gospel? But for any other reason but a reassurance to you for all the times you've slighted the divine, where you haven't paid attention, or you've done something without thinking about it. That the divine love of God doesn't give you your comeuppance for that, because there are more important things, that God knows, that it's more important that you know of grace, that it's more important that you find your stability in that grace, in that forgiveness, in that, and above all, that lesson in divine love, in an unconditioned love, to teach you about something you have never seen before, to teach you about a love that you have never witnessed and will never witness in a changing world, in a world of egoism, to give you a taste of your divine nature, to wet your whistle, as it were, to get you hungry for truth, to show you that there's something bigger, something much, much better. And so we do not serve an angry God. We do not serve a jealous God. We do not serve a petty God. We serve a God of infinite love. Shree Ramakrishna got into a carriage, but who was to pay for the hire? The hosts could not be found. I'm probably going to get in trouble for laughing at this stuff, but I just picture, Ramakrishna, he's such an ideal. I can't really put him in this situation, but I can certainly see Swami Prabhupada, getting caught in this situation, because he was so unassuming and so quiet, so self-controlled. He would be perfectly willing to sit quietly at a table waiting for a waiter that never came, and I guess I can also see the wry smile on his face of what that experience would be, the humor that he that he would see in all of it. Referring to this incident afterward, the master said to the devotees jokingly, "The boys went out to our hosts for the carriage hire. First they were put out, but at last they managed to get together 3 rupees. Our hosts refused to pay the extra 2 annas and said, no, the 3 rupees will do. so, so the boys go to get money and they get tossed out. They get thrown out on the street the first time. And so they have to go back, and the guy says, oh, God, here, all right, here, take it. Well, there's not enough here. There's still 2 more annas. That's all you get. Get out of here. So this is the level of treatment that we're seeing here. And we see that Thakur doesn't take it personally because there is no person to take it personally. He never gets fooled into thinking that he's that body or that mind or that particular. And so immediately, even afterwards, as he tells the story, he doesn't tell the story as gossip with indignation. Like, can you believe that they treated it as a joke? He jokes about it. He finds it humorous. He thinks it's funny. And so what a great lesson in how to treat how to think about mistreatment. When you get pushed around, or you sit next to somebody on the plane and they keep spilling their crumbs all over you, and all that stuff. Don't get indignant. Don't get fooled into thinking that you're a particular that's been offended. Don't listen to the ego list out why you deserve better. Laugh. Find the humor in the situation. You're bigger than that. You're more than that. You are the infinite self, and this is your dream. Enjoy it at any cost. Laugh and find it humorous. Sunday, May 13th, 1883. The master paid a visit to Hari Bhakti Pradayani, Shabha of Gashar. Goodness gracious, what a name. Hari Bhakti Pradayani Shabha of Kancharipara in Calcutta, on the anniversary of the day of that religious society. Kirtan and other forms of devotional music had been arranged for the occasion. The song centered around the Vrindavan episode of Sri Krishna's life. The theme was Radha's peak because of Sri Krishna's having visited Chandravali, another of the gopis of Vrindavan. So we've got a jealousy going on in this story. Radha's friends tried to console her and said to her, why are you piqued? It seems you are not thinking of Krishna's happiness, but only of your own. Radha said to them, I'm not angry at his going to Chandravali's grove, but why should he go there? She doesn't know how to take care of him. May 20th, 1883. The following Sunday, a kirtan was arranged at the house of Ram, one of the master's householder devotees. Shree Ramakrishna graced the occasion with his presence. The musicians sang about Radha's pangs at her separation from Krishna. Radha said to her friends, I have loved to see Krishna from my childhood. My fingernails are worn off from counting the days on them till I shall see him. Once he gave me a garland. Look, it is withered, but I have not yet thrown it away. Alas, where has the moon of Krishna risen now? Has that moon gone away from my firmament, afraid of the Rahu of my peak? Alas, shall I ever see Krishna again? Oh, my beloved Krishna, I have never been able to look at you to my heart's complete satisfaction. I have only one pair of eyes. They blink and so hinder my vision. And further, on account of streams of tears, I could not see enough of my beloved. The peacock feather on the crown of his head shines like arrested lightning. The peacocks, seeing Krishna's dark cloud complexion, would dance in joy, spreading their tails. Oh, friends, I shall not be able to keep my life breath. After my death, place my body on a branch of the dark Tamala tree and inscribe on my body Krishna's sweet name. The master said, God and his name are identical. That is the reason Radha said that. There is no difference between Rama and his holy name. So this is a very important thing. This is where we know the presence when we do our japam. And this is why we pay attention. And this is why each time we repeat that name, we become more and more familiar with the presence, because it is not different from God. To say God's name invokes the presence. And so it's really an amazingly powerful gift that we have to have a mantra with the name of God within and to inscribe it on your body. What is that? That's the sign of surrender, of a complete giving yourself over to the beloved. This is not my body. I am not the doer means I don't even have a claim. It is not me. It is you. And to know this is the point of our japam. It's the point of our practice, is to open up to this truth and to let go of our delusion that this is ours, that this is me and this is mine. It's to dismantle that white picket fence that you've put around your body, where you say, on this side, this is me, and that on the other side of the fence, that out there in that seeming universe, that's God. But me, I'm the king here. I'm the doer here. These are my desires. These are my visions, my longings, my dreams. This is my life. See, so Radha inscribing the name of Krishna on her body was that sign of ownership. This is Krishna's. There is no me here. I'm only witnessing his play, his Leela, and the limitations of this body that keep me from fully experiencing the beloved, the blinking of my eyes, the tears in my eyes. They block my view of Krishna. This egoism, this sense of self has separated you from your beloved, has got you caught, has made you alone, has made you weak, just to bring you to this surrender. May 27th, 1883. Shree Ramakrishna was in his room at Dakshineshwar, conversing with the devotees. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. Master, to M and the other devotees, it is not good to harbor malice. The Shaktas, the Vaishnavas, the Vedantists quarrel among themselves. That is not wise. Padmalochan was a court pundit of the Maharaja of Burdwan. Once at a meeting, the pundits were discussing whether Shiva was superior to Brahma or Brahma to Shiva. Padmalochan gave an appropriate reply. I don't know anything about it, said he. I haven't talked either to Shiva or to Brahma. Which is a wonderful thing, because so many religious discussions, religious arguments happen about concepts that nobody who's arguing has even seen or experienced, know nothing about in a firsthand way. They're arguing over words written in books by other people who did know, but they themselves have no idea. So again, that egoism blocking them even from their own ignorance, not even letting them see that they're not worthy of that argument. They're not worthy of that conversation because they don't know. And yet they fight and quarrel. This is not wise. As a matter of fact, to stand before God and to say that you know anything is not wise. Is not wise. And this is another one of those things that really becomes more apparent when you stand in that place of stillness within, because the mystery of being becomes so dominant in you, the welling up of divine bliss, inexplicable depth, inexplicable, overwhelming understanding of immortality. Who can explain it? Who can explain no time? Who can explain infinity? Who can explain this ignorance that plays the game around you as you watch? Who can explain how the divine can be dreaming and not wake up? All of these things we see. It's like talking to a character in your dream who thinks they know something. What can they know within the confines of a dream? There is no physics there. There is no chemistry there. There is no reality there. It's just mind stuff swirling around the fingers of me and mine. There's nothing to be known in the material world. It's all pretend knowledge that only exists between boundaries. Remove the boundaries, and that knowledge is meaningless. Wake up, and the dream and all of its knowledge and all of its physics and all of its worlds and peoples disappear, have no meaning. You know, if people feel sincere longing, they will find that all paths lead to God. But one should have nishta, single-minded devotion, right? So devotion that goes straight to the beloved, straight to love, straight to that one without a second, that it's not a series of loves going off in different directions. Your love of mountains, your love of lovers, your love of children, your love of pretty pictures, your love of disco music and roller skating. It is also described as chaste and unswerving devotion to God. Chaste, love for God. What does that mean? Love for God alone. That it is divine love alone that you seek and that you express. No interest in all the tantalizing toys of the senses, all the combinations of the five senses. You know, that's another thing that becomes very clear at the edge of mind, is how absurd it is that you've been so infatuated with the combinations of five. You've just got five things to play with, five toys, and you've been playing with them for thousands of years, thousands of births, and yet you still can't get bored and move on. These are the things you become aware of. And that's when you stand before God and say, I know nothing. I really know nothing, O Lord. And that is the beginning of surrender. That's the beginning of dying before you die. When the ego is dismantled because it's recognized as ignorance. It can't fool you anymore. You're no longer confused. You're no longer running after these worthless things that die before you close your hand on them. It is like a tree with only one trunk shooting straight up. Promiscuous devotion is like a tree with five branches. It's like a bush. It doesn't have a trunk. It's growing off in every direction at the same time. Such was the single-minded devotion of the gopis to Krishna that they didn't care to look at anyone but Krishna, anyone but the Krishna they had seen at Vrindavan, the shepherd Krishna, bedecked with a garland of yellow wildflowers and wearing a peacock feather on his crest. At the sight of Krishna at Mathura, with a turban on his head and dressed in royal robes, the gopis pulled down their veils. They would not look at his face. Who is this man, they said. Should we violate our chaste love for Krishna by talking to him? The devotion of the wife to her husband is also an instance of unswerving love. She feeds her brothers-in-law as well and looks after their comfort, but she has a special relationship with her husband. Likewise, one may have that single-minded devotion to one's own religion, but one should not, on that account, hate other faiths. On the contrary, one should have a friendly attitude toward them. The master bathed in the Ganges and then went to the Kali temple with M. He sat before the image and offered flowers at the feet of the Divine Mother. Now and then he put flowers on his own head and meditated. After a long time, he stood up. He was in a spiritual mood, and he danced before the image, chanting the name of Kali. Now and again he said, "Oh, Mother, oh, destroyer of suffering, oh, remover of grief and agony." Was he teaching people thus to pray to the Mother of the universe with a yearning heart in order to get rid of the suffering inevitable in this life? Shree Ramakrishna returned to his room and sat on the west porch. Recall, M, Nakur Vaishnav, and other devotees were with him. Nakur had been known to the master for about 25 years. He was a devotee of Gauranga and had a small shop which Ramakrishna had often visited when he first came to Calcutta from Karmarpur. Still overpowered with divine ecstasy, the master sang, "O Kali, my mother full of bliss, enchantress of the almighty Shiva, in your delirious joy you dance, clapping your hands together. Eternal One, you great first cause, clothed in the form of the void. You, wearing the moon upon your brow, where did you find your garland of heads before the universe was made? You are the mover of all that move, and we are but your helpless toys. We move alone as you move us, and speak through us, you speak. But worthless, Kamalakanta says, fondly berating you, confoundress with thy flashing sword, thoughtlessly you have put to death my virtue and my sin alike." He sang again. That's important. She doesn't just put to death sin. She puts to death the virtue also. And why is that important? Because it's that perfect balance. It's that perfect sattva. Sattva is the perfect balance between rajas and tamas. And in that state of perfect balance, the lock can be pulled open. So when we see neither good nor evil, we see the unity of all. We see both sides of the coin simultaneously. At that point, the lock is unclicked, the door is open, and the light of consciousness becomes part of our knowing. We see and know its source to be ourself. The shadow of the ego dissolved, and all of the ignorance of hunger and thirst subsides. He sang again, "Mother, you are our soul redeemer. You, the support of the three gunas, higher than the Most High. You are compassionate, I know. Who takes away our bitter grief? Sandhya art thou, and Gayatri. You sustain this universe. Mother, the help are you. Of those who have no help but you, O eternal beloved of Shiva. You are in earth, in water. You lie in the root of all. In me, in every creature. You have your home, though clothed with form, yet you are the formless reality." The master sang a few more songs in praise of... What's that?
Yeah, this is the song that you had sung. Amar Matam Tara.
Oh, yes. Matvam Hitara, indeed. Look at that. I have no help but you, indeed. You are the earth, in water you. You lie at the root of all. In me, in every creature, you have your home, though clothed with form, yet you are this formless reality. You see those last two lines. Interesting that he's singing that about Kali, when that is the truth about you. That you in this body have made your home, clothed in form, and yet you are the formless reality. You are before the body and before the mind. You are that noun of perfect love, that noun of perfect wisdom, that noun of pure being. The master sang a few more songs in praise of the Divine Mother. Then he said to the devotees, "It is not always best to tell householders about the sorrows of life. They want bliss. Those who suffer from chronic poverty it's dinner time. Those who suffer from chronic poverty can go without food for a day or two, but it is not wise to talk about the sorrows and miseries of life to those who suffer if their food is delayed a few minutes. Vaishnav Charan used to say, why should one constantly dwell on sin? Be merry, right? Because when you're dwelling on sin, what is that? That's dwelling on lack. That's dwelling on hunger. That's dwelling on thirst. That's what causes us to go looking for fulfillment in the material world. He says, why are you focusing on your longings? Why are you focusing on your imbalances, your thirsts and your hungers? Don't put your mind on those things. Be merry, be full of love, express the inner self, express what is from within. Don't keep your mind on the hungers from what is outside or seemingly outside. Dwell on your contentment, dwell on your immortal nature, dwell on love. These are the things to pay attention to. Don't let the body tell you it's hungry. Fine, let it be hungry. But you continue to dwell inside. And when food comes, it comes. You know, when the needs are come, you're fulfilled. The body's fulfilled. The mind is fulfilled. But you always know that within you are always already fulfilled because this body drops and you survive. So the conditions of the body do not determine your hunger and thirst. Know this and dwell in that space. Don't make yourself miserable by longing for things you don't have, for thinking that some glorious day in a future, somewhere, sometime, things will be perfect. That day doesn't ever come because the moment that you experience is always now. It's never tomorrow's. It's never yesterday's. It's always now. So why should you dwell on sin? Be merry. While the master was resting after his midday meal, Manohar Goswami, a singer of kirtan, arrived. He sang about the ecstatic love of Gauranga and the divine episode of Vrindavan. The master was absorbed in a deep spiritual mood. He tore off his shirt and said to the melody of the kirtan, assuming the attitude of Radha, "Oh, Krishna, my beloved, oh, friends, bring Krishna to me. Then you will be real friends. Or take me to him, and I will be your slave forever." The musician sat spellbound at Shree Ramakrishna's ecstasy. Then he said with folded hands, "Won't you please rid me of my worldliness? Master, you are like the holy man who went about the city after first finding a lodging. You are a sweet person and express many sweet ideas." Musician, sir, I'm like a bullock that only carries the bag of sugar but cannot taste it. Alas, I myself do not enjoy the sweetness of divine bliss. The melodious music went on, and everyone was filled with joy.